Anyway, thanks for doing this Saturday. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we had some, I got some bills we'll announce this week, a couple of which you're probably already aware of. One you may not be, which I'll share with you. Well, I want to thank a lot of you because you were great help on the credit card legislation. That took 20 years and to get done. And it was a narrowly approved committee, as you know, and then overwhelmingly adopted on the floor of the Senate and the House. Will give consumers back some power, the ability to opt in and opt out, whether or not they want to be saddled with additional fees and charges. We're going to do the same with the overdrafts. A lot of these debit cards, as well as checking accounts, but the big thing is debit cards, which is, again, it's almost $40 billion this year alone in overdraft fees. It exceeds what we're being collected by the credit card industry in terms of their interest rate increases and fees. And again, I appreciate the fact that several banks in the last week have announced, including Wells Fargo, Chase, JP Morgan, and Bank of America, all announced that they're going to change their policies on overdraft fees. Although, frankly, a lot of it's not very good. They all said they did it because they just decided it was the right thing to do. Well, I'm very delighted to hear that. I think that had something to do with the fact we were announcing legislation in this area, but maybe suspicious about motivations. That's why they decided to move. But obviously, I'm not going to want to rely entirely on the goodwill. But since they have goodwill, they should be enthusiastically supporting the legislation to do what at least they're claiming they want to do, and make sure that all the other institutions that charge overdraft fees will do so as well. That will be, again, some relief for consumers, obviously, at a tight time. Basically, it comes down to opting in, opting out. I mean, empowering consumers. Obviously, everyone has to be responsible for the conduct of their financial affairs, but you want to have to make the decision yourself as a consumer as to whether or not you want to be subjected to overdraft fees. And if you don't, then that time you put the money in and ask for the ATM, or you want to buy something and they ought to be notified at that point that you're exceeding your limits, and give people the power then to not be subjected to the well, average $26, even for 10, 15 cents on overdrafts. So that's going to change. Interchange fees. I didn't include it in the credit card bill because I thought it might be a tipping point and just be too much to take on that bill. But almost every retailer in the country will tell you about the outrageous interchange fees the credit card industry charges. Those costs get passed on to consumers as well. It's a complicated area to get it right because obviously there's some cost associated with these things. But we're going to introduce some legislation on interchange fees as well, and hopefully move that as a proposal.
In separate legislation?
In separate, probably not combined with the, although I'll look at that as a possibility. Thirdly, it's not been talked about lately, but it's something that and again, I'm particularly grateful to many of you here and others around the country on this one, but the FISA court issue. And this week I'll introduce legislation to prohibit retroactive immunity from the telecom industry that got a pass. And I guess that's going to come up in some context, whether it's a Patriot Act or whatever else, and I just feel again, wow, this is, some people are going to argue, well, it's ancient history. It's not ancient history in my view. This was outrageous. It was done egregiously in my view. The FISA courts, I supported. The whole idea to have them operate, but when you bypass even that and allow an industry to be able to reach into virtually every home through fax, internet, telephone communications, none of us have any idea as to what the parameters were in that area. So we'll be introducing that legislation as well, which I think will have some interest to those who care about those issues. It's the rule of law. In my view, it's not more complicated than that. And those who had decided to go off on their own, and others did. It was not like everybody did. Quest decided not to go along with the Justice Department at the time, and said we're not going to do it, because we thought it was wrong. So it wasn't a question where everybody did it. So I don't know what will happen with it. I didn't succeed terribly well the last time it came up. But I didn't do terribly well on credit cards either, other than before. I think now with 60 votes in the Senate, Paul Kirk having arrived the other day, we may be in a stronger position to actually prevail on some of these things. So that's not something I'd announced before. Anyway, I talked about overdrafts and interchange fees and other things before, but I know the particular interest in the bloggers here about the FISA courts and what happened to that issue. It was a great great sense. I never would have had traction on the issue had it not been for the bonds who made this an issue across the country.
You have some other senators who are currently working towards the FISA retroactive. Feingold, Sanders, they've all been discussing. There's a joint bill out there, I think, with like 8 senators attached to it.
Good.
I don't know if you've seen it yet.
No, more the merrier. No.
Well, it's a Feingold initiative. You might want to look at it.
Yeah, I'll talk to Russ. Russ was very helpful, obviously, before as well. And I sort of took the lead on that issue back a year and a half or 2 years ago. And
We realize that.
wouldn't have had much traction. The mainstream media obviously was not getting a lot of coverage because of the cross ownership in a lot of these areas, where they frankly wanted to highlight an issue that they were going to cut into their bottom line to some degree. So had it not been for alternative media that was reporting on it, I don't think I would have gotten very far with it at all. Turned out we ended up losing, but it was disappointing, frankly. Some people I thought were going to be with us that were not.